Matthew chapter 9, verses 1 through 8. Jesus stepped into a boat, crossed over, and came to his own town. Some men brought to him a paralyzed man lying on a mat. When Jesus saw their faith, he said to the man, "Take heart, son, your sins are forgiven." At this, some of the teachers of the law said to themselves, "This man is blaspheming." Knowing their thoughts, Jesus said, "Why do you entertain evil thoughts in your hearts? Which is easier to say, 'Your sins are forgiven,' or to say, 'Get up and walk'? But I want you to know that the Son of Man has authority on earth to forgive sins." So he said to the paralyzed man, "Get up, take your mat and go home." Then the man got up and went home. When the crowd saw this, they were filled with awe, and they praised God, who had given such authority to men. This story of the healing of the paralyzed man is found in Matthew 9, verses 1 to 8. Matthew is the first book in the New Testament, the second part of the Bible. The second book in the second part of the Bible, so the second book in the New Testament, is Mark. So remember, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. This story of the healing of the paralyzed man is also found in Mark chapter 2. Now, Mark tells us that this paralyzed man has 4 friends. And these 4 friends want to take their friend to Jesus for healing. However, the house in which Jesus is in is full. So the 4 friends do something miraculous, something dramatic. They get on the roof of the house and remove it. Then they lower their friend in front of Jesus, hoping that Jesus will heal their paralyzed friend. Jesus sees the man in front of him. Jesus' immediate response is strange. He does not heal the paralyzed man immediately. When Jesus saw their faith, according to Matthew, he said to the man, "Take heart, son, your sins are forgiven." So Jesus says to the paralyzed man, "Take heart, son, your sins are forgiven." What does the forgiveness of sins have to do with the healing of a paralyzed man? Why does Jesus not heal the man right away? His friends have taken a lot of trouble putting their friend in front of him. All Jesus needs to do is to place his hand on the man and heal him. Instead, what does Jesus say? Jesus says, "Take heart, son, your sins are forgiven." So at this, according to Matthew, at this some of the teachers of the law said to themselves, "This fellow, this Jesus, he's blaspheming." So what is the meaning of this word blasphemy? The religious leaders say that Jesus forgives the sins of the paralyzed man, and when he does that, he is blaspheming. To commit the religious crime of blasphemy is to say something disrespectful of God. Mark is a little bit more clearer in explaining why the religious leaders think that Jesus is blaspheming. Now, some of the teachers of the law were sitting there thinking to themselves, "Why does this fellow talk like that? He's blaspheming. Who can forgive sins but God alone?" Mark 2, verses 6 to 7. The religious leaders cannot believe that Jesus forgives sins. The only person in this world who can forgive sins is God. They do not believe that Jesus is God. "Why does this fellow, this Jesus, talk like that? He's blaspheming our religion. Who can forgive sins but God alone?" And they find it so difficult to believe that Jesus can forgive sins. So Jesus then replies, which is easier, to say to this paralyzed man, "Your sins are forgiven," or to say, "Get up, take your mat, and walk"? Yes, I think that's a very good question that we should try to ponder upon. Which do you think is more difficult? For Jesus to say, "Your sins are forgiven," or for Jesus to say, "Get up and walk"? And then Jesus further says this, found in Mark chapter 2, verses 10 to 11. "But I want you to know that the Son of Man has authority on earth to forgive sins." So he said to the man, "I tell you, get up, take your mat, and go home." So the term Son of Man is another title for Jesus. When Jesus says he is the Son of Man, he means that he's the son of human beings, if you like. He means to say that he represents human beings. And he says that to prove that he can forgive sins, he's going to ask this man to get up and walk. And what does this man do? He responds to Jesus. The man gets up, takes his mat, and goes home. So anyone can say to another person, your sins are forgiven. We can say this to each other right now. Your sins are forgiven. However, not everyone can say to a paralyzed man, I tell you, get up, take your mat, and go home. Therefore, this brings us to the question of who Jesus really is. We know that Jesus is a man. However, has Jesus committed blasphemy? He is a man, but is he God too? If he can tell the man to get up, take his mat and go home, can he also forgive sins? Either Jesus is committing blasphemy or he is truly God. You know, sometimes as we go on through life, we forget the preciousness of forgiveness in our lives. And I find that I act in certain ways because I do not experience the forgiveness of God in my life. In this story, Jesus wants to heal this paralyzed man. However, he also wants to communicate to his followers and the crowd that he, Jesus, has come to show people the greatest healing of all, the forgiveness of sins. In Jesus, God has come to forgive people of their sins. Through Jesus, God has come to forgive people of their sins. Brianna is not her real name. She was part of a church family I served in. Brianna and her mother had a misunderstanding. They did not talk to each other for some time. Let's call it 10 years. Brianna gave her life to Jesus. Jesus forgives Brianna of her sins. And day by day, as Brianna lives out her Christian life for Jesus, Brianna comes to understand that forgiveness is more than a feeling. Forgiveness is a decision. She also develops a conviction that the forgiveness Jesus extends to her, she wants to extend it to her mother too. So therefore, she takes the initiative and picks up the phone. She calls her mother. Mom, I am so sorry for the hurt I caused you. And they start to talk again. And I want to let you know that year, Christmas dinner was different. Christmas dinner was a dinner of Brianna and her mom and the whole family coming together once again. So God's forgiveness is still available to us today. Jesus still says to us, daughter, your sins are forgiven. Son, your sins are forgiven. So Psalm 130, which is found in the middle part of the first part of the Bible, the Old Testament, Psalm 130 is a famous prayer, if you like, to God that acknowledges the forgiveness of God in our lives. And so in closing, I'm going to read through Psalm 130. Out of the depths I cry to you, Lord. Lord, hear my voice. Let your ears be attentive to my cry for mercy. If you, Lord, kept a record of sins, Lord, who could stand? But with you there is forgiveness, so that we can with reverence serve you. I wait for the Lord. My whole being waits, and in his hope, in his word, I put my hope. I wait for the Lord. More than watchmen wait for the morning. More than watchmen wait for the morning. Israel, put your hope in the Lord, for with the Lord is unfailing love, and with him is full redemption. He himself will redeem Israel from all their sins. Psalm 130.